Yeah, I don't think the average Australian realises in 2009, 2010, 2011, I went online and looked at the statistics and visited the Australian Japan Foundation page of the Monarchist League Constitution, King Charles III Commonwealth of Australia realm. And I also looked at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the actual relationship between Australia and Japan. I don't think the average person realises there was actually never a treaty with Nippon. There was no treaty. I said this well before it was broadcast anyway, on other media apparatuses. There was no treaty with Nipponese, the Japanese. There was no treaty. According to the official agreement between Australia and Japan, it was the context of the agreement. There was no treaty until 2022. There was a treaty in 2022, though pre-2022 there was no treaty. The official agreement between King Charles III Commonwealth of Australia realm and Nippon, Japan, was context trading partner. That was, in definition, that was the agreement between Australia and Nippon, was trading partner. That was the official agreement, trading partner. And then in 2022, there was an actual treaty with Nippon. There was a treaty, and we saw the Monarchist League equivalents in Nippon go to England and met King Charles III Commonwealth of Australia realm, which was Buckingham Palace in England. See, the AFP have the belief that Australia is UK, though Republic of Australia is not UK at all. I'd say the majority of Australians have the belief that we are not UK yet. All the politicians of Definition 6 in the Fed are sworn to serve King Charles of their Monarchist League, and they've committed a genocide and shoved it under the carpet. Though before the treaty, the context was trading partner, but there was international conventions, international law. There was international conventions, and there was obviously international convention treaties on particular aspects of international law agreements, and treaties on international law agreements. So, though pre-2022, there was no actual treaty. Japan had no treaty with King Charles III Commonwealth of Australia realm. There was actually no treaty, but I remember working on banana farms, and Japanese would say how much they fucking hate Australians. It was like that. But then it was like they're your best friend and they're trading partners. And though I was on the internet online in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011 or 2012, it was probably it was probably after my son was abducted by the Japanese. Um, but um, but the Japanese used to say how the North Korean ships would come past and abduct their children and take them back to North Korea, and all this shit about abducted Japanese being taken to North Korea by secret North Korean ships and all this shit. Um, but I was online and according to the figures in the statistics in 2010, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, the numbers then, there was about 50-something thousand Nipponese, Japanese, living in Lfdra, Australia, and there was the visa I had in Japan when I had business rights, work rights, and I was a registered alien. I had to have a alien registration card when I lived in Japan. I had to be registered by the Ministry of Justice as a registered alien. When I looked at the statistics, there was just over 6,000 Australians living in Japan, and Japan's population at that time was 150 million something, with over 300 Navy ships or something. And I was a registered... The 300 Navy ship part was whatever the population is of the planet. So, though, when I was living in Japan, I was registered as an alien. I had to have an alien registration card, as I said. Though, there was 6,000, just over 6,000 Australians that were living in Japan at that time. Obviously, there was tourist visa or visitor visa, or tourist visa, or whatever it is, for just fingerprints and photo and however many days it is. But there was 6,000 Japanese living in... No, 6,000 Australians living in Japan with business, like they can do business, work, all of that. Though I was married to a Japanese national or something, and so what percentage of the 6,000 were actually on the visa that I was, the permit that I was on? But according to the official agreement between Australia and Japan, it was trading partner. So they were trading partners. So in definition, everyone just traded partners and all of that. But yeah, the Japanese soldiers were known to they raped all the women in the Philippines. The Nipponese army, they just raped women in the Philippines, yet the US Marines, they just raped the Taliban and shot them dead. They just raped the Taliban and shot them dead. So, and the Japanese soldiers, they just raped all the women in the Philippines and Korea and China and Cambodia and Burma and probably even Russia and parts of Europe, though, and Papua New Guinea, though. But according to Spaniard, they brought their own. They would claim they bought their own sex slaves. Yet the Japanese just collected women sex slaves from where they were conquering. Yet, what percentage of the 6,000 Australians that were living in Japan that weren't on tourist visas were on the marriage visa that I was on? Yet my ex-wife had already knowingly exited my son from Australia because he entered on his Japanese passport. If you enter on a foreign passport, I didn't even know he had a Japanese passport. This is the thing. But see, the percentage of lived experience, there was only, at that time, there was only 6,000 Australians actually living in Nippon, Japan. There was only 6,000 Australians. And out of the 150-something million Japanese, there was 50-something thousand Japanese living in Australia. I haven't looked at the statistics online about 2022 or 2023 or 2024, what the number is of Australians that are living in Japan as registered aliens and Japanese living in Australia, dual Japanese living in Australia as Australian passport holders and Japanese passport holders as non-registered aliens. If Australians, say for example, if an Australian married a Japanese person and they went to Japan and the husband or wife had to get a visa in Japan, the only way they could get a visa is if they were married. Though what percentage of the 6,000 that were living in Japan were actually on a visa through marriage, where in Australia, Japanese don't have to be registered as aliens. Yet when I was in Japan, I had to register as an alien. I had a Ministry of Justice alien registration card, a MOAFA, Ministry of, I don't know what it was called. It was a Ministry of Justice alien registration card. At a Ministry of Justice alien, I had to have an alien registration card. How many Japanese that are Australian passport holders and Japanese passport holders, how many of those Japanese as Australian citizens with passports and Japanese citizens with passports, how many of them have to have an alien registration card in Australia? Not one single person. Yet the 6,000 Australians that were living in Japan have to have an alien registration card. I've been a registered alien in Japan. I had to have a alien registration card. Who in Australia that you know has ever had to register as an alien in Nippon because their son's been abducted? Who, in the aspect of international law, how it rolls with passports, if you're a dual passport holder and you enter Australia on your foreign passport and you've got an Australian passport, you've exited yourself. So if someone's got a British passport and they exit Australia on their British passport and then re-enter on their British passport, they've exited themselves. There used to be a time that dual passport holders at one stage, dual passport holders lost their Australian citizenship if they held a passport of another country. Though according to one of my ex-Australian brothers that became a British citizen so he's not my brother anymore. He said that in Japan, when they turn 21, they have to renounce Australian citizenship or something. But my two sons that live in Okinawa, they don't speak English. They can't speak English. So, they both speak fluent Japanese and Okinawan, Ryukyuan or something. But what's the percentage of Australians that have actually lived the experience of being a registered alien in Nippon under that visa?